Okay, hi again, me again, my mate. So we were asked just to do a very short chat to you about the tourism industry, and again, you know, I know so many of you are in the industry, but this is just a bit of sort of background on how the industry is structured. We've talked a bit today about QTIC, about Tourism Australia, Tourism Queensland. So this is just a bit of a sort of an overview. And for those of you that know this so well, I'll try and keep it quick so you can move forward. But basically in Australia, we can look at the tourism industry, you know, things that are happening on a number of different levels. Cameron's talked about being involved, you know, at the sort of the local regional level with Brisbane marketing, up at the state level with Tourism Queensland or Tourism and Events Queensland. So pretty much on the government side, on the far side there, we have the government sort of departments, which have then sitting alongside them some sort of tourism body or tourism agency or organisation. So at the local level, there's the councils, and then they have their bodies. So you know, there's one in the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, one out Ipswich. And then it moves up through there looking at, so Tourism and Events Queensland are very active, and they have some involvement in the Indigenous tourism space, which I'll mention in a minute, up through to Tourism Australia. And at the moment, unless it's changed this week, or that tourism is sitting with Austrade at the moment, I don't know, it moves around a little bit. Moving over to sort of look at the industry structure, there's a whole range of other organisations that can support and work with the tourism industry. So there's organisations like the Tourism Transport Forum, which is in effect sort of a lobby body. The ATEC, Australian Tourism Export Council, and they've had some involvement in this space before in some of those overseas marketing. And there's even things like Ecotourism Australia, who are at the moment, Ecotourism Australia have the accreditation, come across the ROC program, the Respecting Our Culture program. So that has moved to sit with Ecotourism Australia at the present time. And then all the different parts of the tourism industry have their own associations as well. So Australian Hotels Association, Caribbean associations, transport, we just go on and on. If you come down to the state level, again, there's a number of those sort of industry bodies, but QTIC, it's been mentioned a lot today, and we've got Rhonda here. I'm going to sound biased, and we've got someone from WA in the room, so they'll probably say, no, but we are pretty lucky in Queensland because we do have QTIC, and although they're a state body, I think it would be fair to say that they you know, they're sort of the go-to body from what I've seen around the tourism industry. If there's a tourism issue happening around Australia, you'll always see Daniel on the news talking about it. So Daniel Bushwin. So QTIC are an amazing body, and I'll just keep talking about them while they're here, but they also have their own Indigenous program, especially around Indigenous employment. So if you haven't met Rhonda, she's over the front in red. It would be good to have a chat to her too about work in this space. But each of the states will have...
I was going to say, we've got Tourism Council of Western Australia, which are, you know, do all the same things, advocacy, look after the industry. They just don't have an Aboriginal policy yet.
Yeah. So that's kind of sort of a very quick, rough sort of how the tourism structures works, and I really picked that up when Cameron was talking about the different ways that they're engaging with all these different bodies, whether it's local, state, and so on. And I think we'll hear that more today as we hear from the other speakers. So Tourism Australia has an Indigenous tourism champions program, and we'll put a little bit more information about this up on the website just for you to learn about. And there's some of the businesses represented around the state that are here today. Tourism Australia, it's their website's looking a bit sad at the moment, but they don't seem to have a whole lot of Indigenous tourism content on at the moment. So they used to have, although Robert has pointed out to me that he has some of those statistics that I was missing this morning. So you know, so as a professional researcher, that's good form of me to have missed those. But looking at Tourism Australia, the profile just seems a little bit quiet at the moment. But
so that's a current. Shut that. Whenever I just put YouTube down, it always then starts replaying on me. So I'll just push it down.
So that's a little bit about sort of what Tourism Australia is doing. As I said, this, you know, they're often doing different activities. They'll do the road shows overseas and bring in tour operators to learn a bit more about Indigenous tourism. Locally, as I said, Tourism and Events Queensland are also involved in this space, and they have a Queensland Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Experiences Guide. When I was standing up before, I talked about some of the businesses in southeast Queensland, and this is what's that they are advertised in this current publication, and we'll also put access to that up through Michelle's website, QSNTS's website. So they also are involved in that space in terms of marketing, and you can see there that they're looking at, you know, helping grow demand and develop products that would meet market demand. A very quick sort of background. One of the things I was asked to talk about was sort of about the process of how tourists go from sitting at home on their lounge watching an ad for Indigenous tourism in Australia to actually getting here and so on. That's a very boring sort of graph there, but just talking about the process that consumers will go through in terms of deciding that they need a holiday, looking for that information and considering those alternatives. You can see over on the left, that's where all this marketing and internet and website presence, social media presence comes in to try and influence them to come to southeast Queensland, for example. Once they've then gone through and made their decision, made their purchase, had their holiday, had a fantastic time, we then move over to this side here where they move into that post-purchase phase where they're evaluating how satisfied were they, did it match up with what they expected. So, you know, did they come to Brisbane or southeast Queensland thinking that they were going to do something? Did it meet that expectation, exceed it, or was it not what they'd quite expected? And the post-purchase is increasingly becoming so much more important now in sort of this social media age where, you know, that what did they used to say, if a customer was unhappy, they'd walk out and tell, you know, 10 people, was it? Now they walk out and, you know, tell
millions.
Millions, that's right. You know, and you just don't want to be the business that gets picked up in a viral thread. Like the guy that's going after the Wallabies, after Michael Checker at the moment, he's just become this viral thread around Australia, criticising and offering to coach the Wallabies on Saturday. So this is where things are, you know, are really getting so key, and we can see that there's now a lot more emphasis being put onto managing this sort of post-purchase experience. And I talked about some research that Afia, one of my colleagues from UQ, did, looking at, you know, we can use that post-purchase experience TripAdvisor to actually see what people are really thinking, because, you know, if you can make people happy on TripAdvisor, where normally it's just a platform for a rant and a rave, then, you know, you've got to be doing something pretty good, I would suggest. So one of the things John and Kevin were saying, you know, to sort of talk about is how do, you know, again, how do we get from all this, actually, you know, what are the channels that we use? And we talk about in tourism distribution channels. So just a sort of a very quick way that we might go through that. So increasingly it's direct, it's you know, the internet, you can reach someone from Toowoomba all the way sitting over in Munich thinking about coming out, you know, they can find you much easier, and people now are increasingly having those capacities to book themselves through your websites. If you move down the middle, sort of the green section here, this trade, or what we would have called when I was doing my tourism studies travel trade, probably still is called travel trade, the sort of the traditional things, you know, travel agents, you'd go to the shopping centre and you'd see the Harvey World Travel or the Flight Centre, and you'd go in and they'd put it all together for you and you'd pay your money and off you go. Travel agents would put that together. They'd work with travel wholesalers who bring, your tour, your accommodation, your bus company, put it all together, package it up in a nice brochure to sell for a package price to the tourists. And we then have these, in that spot there, these inbound tour operators. So they're basically the people that are involved kind of behind the scenes in getting all this together. But what we're seeing is a real transition away from that. Now they're still very important and they have a role to play, but we're increasingly seeing sort of a different model where it's now online distribution, okay? And so it's not so much you need Flight Centre to put you in their brochure, but you want to be on booking.com or TripAdvisor or one of those. And so we're seeing what in the past would have been some fairly sort of neat, and I'll show you in a minute, some neat, this is what you do and you go to here, it's now sort of changing and there's lots of different ways to approach that, which is exciting because it offers more opportunities.
Sorry, I just want to also say that it can be a pitfall for when you're starting up business, not monitoring your website, because the website now is your front door, and we've had businesses in WA go under just because they didn't even realise their website wasn't up because they didn't pay their domain. A simple thing which cost $25 to $30 wasn't paid, their website went down, suddenly they got no visitors.
Yeah, it's amazing in sort of 10 years how quickly this has all changed. Then there's sort of the other down the bottom here, and these are again more of a traditional channel, things like visitor information centres. If you go for a walk down the mall, you'll see in the middle there's a Brisbane Visitor Information Centre. There'll be one out at Redlands and Gold Coast and so on. And this would be the place where you'd walk in if you're a tourist coming into town and pick up some brochures and stuff like that. And again, that's increasingly changing, and visitor information centres are trying to reinvent themselves and are now becoming places where you can go in and they'll book accommodation for you and those sorts of things. People aren't printing brochures so much anymore, like would that be fair to say? That's,
the digital age.
It's all digital. So these are just some of the ways that you might reach that. So these are the sorts of things that, in the past it was the shop front, the travel agent, that it was, you needed a tour company to put your holiday together. If you wanted information, you couldn't jump on Google and find it in 3 seconds. You'd have to trudge down and find a brochure. We're now seeing the proliferation of things like TripAdvisor, Booking.com, even things like Webjet, which has made the travel agents have to totally rethink what they do to stay relevant. If they didn't adapt, then they're out of business, and potentially they're not out of the woods yet, I guess. There's still a market that wants to sit and talk to someone, but increasingly people are much more confident to do it on their own. We saw, Qantas and the airlines and the hotels all getting on board with offering their own booking platforms because they realised that they had to catch up with what the market's wanting. And then, of course, we've got the new age of the Airbnbs, Uber. So Airbnb is now the largest accommodation provider in the world, and they don't own a single hotel room. Okay, so it's a very different space that we're working in, and there's plenty of people that that could chat to you about that a bit more and what that means. And of course, you want to stay on everyone's good social media side, I guess would be fair to say, because no one moves too much without putting it on their Facebook or their Twitter. So a couple of sort of wrap-up points around sort of the business of tourism, and tourism, the good, the bad, the ugly, or the not so good, as Michelle suggested, would be more appropriate. So these ideas of build it and they will come. If we just build it, if we just open up, then surely people will want to come and see us. And there's plenty of tourism businesses around Australia of all sorts that are sitting there pretty empty because people didn't just come because they built it. So that market research, understanding who's your visitor, where they're coming from, why they would want to come, what's going to be unique, what can you do that someone else isn't already doing. One of the things to keep in mind is, that there's a lot of cultural tourism product. How can you embed culture into other types of products? What makes your experience different to what they might be able to, if they're down at the Gold Coast and have done something when they're coming past Sunshine Coast, what could you maybe do that's a bit different that they wouldn't have done before? So there's a lot of opportunities in other sectors and embedding and getting that sort of marriage between culture and other experiences. Obviously, especially those from the north would be able to say that tourism is a seasonal industry. We're not as affected by that down here. Winter is, probably not that much different to some point. Well, a little bit. But the southerners think it's much cooler. But, that has implications for the workforce planning. What are people going to do when there's not so many tourists around? So things to consider. And just the importance of sort of skilling and training and the capabilities of staff. Going back to the TripAdvisor study I talked about, the number one thing that people commented on was the guide. More than half of the people, that's really what they focused on. And they were also very focused on things like the beds were comfy, that it was on time. I had so those service, those basic things that if you went to a restaurant you'd think about. So that sort of employment and the training is very important in that regard. We've got some people today talking about partnerships and collaboration, networks. David already spoke a bit about that this morning with what he was involved with Jagakai. And some of the research shows that some of the most successful businesses have gone into some sort of partnership model, collaborating, clustering and networks with other businesses in their areas. And of course, Waytop, what they're doing, Robert's come all the way over from that side of the country to talk about how they've managed to get that moving through these collaborations and engagements. And just finally, around marketing, some of the work that Michelle and I have been doing and others is just trying to understand a lot more about the visitor. So Robert understands a lot more about the visitor. He's got better access to data than we do. But why is it that people are saying that they want an experience but they're not taking it up? Why aren't more people taking that up? This is something very unique that they can only do in Australia. So what's going on? What's happening there? So part of the research that we are very interested to find out is just more about that consumer. What would get them through the door? Because we know that once they're through the door, they're very, very happy with what they've had. And using this information, using knowledge and creating that knowledge to develop new products, understand what the consumer would really want, and then being able to develop more targeted marketing campaigns to try and get through everybody. That's enough from me now.